We are back on the Jason Mackey Weekly Conversation. We're here on the Pirates channel for the third segment today, talking about spring training, everything going down in Bradenton. Before we get into all of that, want to thank our sponsor for this segment. It's Greenewalt Roofing. Hey, Pittsburgh. When you think great roofs, you think Greenewalt Roofing Company. With over 20 years of experience, Greenewalt knows your roof is your home's first line of defense from rain, wind, snow, and ice. That's why Greenewalt Roofing's standard for perfection is so important. You can trust that their team of experienced installers will treat your property like it's their own. When it comes to roof replacements, Greenewalt Roofing is Pittsburgh's only choice. Visit greenewaltroofing.com today or call 412-314-8882 to schedule your free estimate. PA contractor number 36262. Jason, I wanted to talk about colleague Joe Starkey's column because Noah Hiles, Andrew Destin, they've been doing a great job breaking down the day-to-day down in Bradenton. If you haven't seen their videos yet, check out their daily reports. They've been awesome. So I want to get a little big picture with you. Joe Starkey wrote about the disparity in MLB payrolls today and how he blames Bob Nutting and teams like the Pirates more for that than he blames the free spending Dodgers, the Yankees, the Mets. I wanted to get your view of that, of who is more responsible for the golf here. Is it the small market owners or is it the big ones?
Yeah, I mean, both. That's a cop-out answer, though. So, I mean, I'm not going to absolve Bob Nutting and the Pirates for blame. I mean, they should be spending more on their roster. So, yeah. And if I go back and forth, Adam, because, and here's the way I look at this, that if you look at the average MLB salary, right? What's the distance between the Pirates and that and between that and the Dodgers? I don't know the exact average of major league salaries right now, but I can almost guarantee that there's a larger distance between that number and where the Dodgers are at. I don't like what the Dodgers are doing. I don't like the deferral of Shohei Ohtani's contract, but I do understand what Rob Manfred is saying. If they're playing within the confines of the rules, and as are the Pirates, really. What I hate is the situation. I hate that both are legal. The Pirates should be required to spend more. The Dodgers should be stopped from spending what they are spending. And that's honestly on Rob Manfred. It's on Major League Baseball. It's on the Players Association. It's on everything for not having a salary cap. And I dislike that very much. But if we're going to make this, who is more at fault, then yeah. I mean, the Pirates, you cannot objectively say that 76 wins to 76 wins, being behind where they're at in a rebuild, which they are, and your payroll looks like it does right now, that's not acceptable. That's simply not acceptable. And if you're going to win games in a different way, a la the Cleveland Guardians or Tampa Bay Rays, fine. I'll live with the lack of payroll, but you're not winning games like that. You're not winning games like that at all. There are stark differences in how those teams trade and draft and all this other stuff. So yeah, I'm just fine going with Joe's assessment. I completely understand people who are frustrated by the lack of money spent. It's a fair criticism.
I think you transitioned into my next question well about a salary cap. It gets thrown around all the time as the solution for the Pirates problem. I think that's been more pronounced this offseason when they've spent almost nothing on outside free agents, despite the way they ended last season. But one of my favorite follows on social media is Pat Lackey. He used to run the Pirates blog, Where Have You Gone, Andy Van Slyke. Now he just kind of does social media. But he says you should be suspicious as a Pirates fan of anything that Bob Nutting is advocating for, given his stewardship of the franchise. And let me ask you this. In any world where there's a salary cap, there's a salary floor. And a lot of people are relying on the notion of if there's a salary floor, then Bob Nutting has to spend more, then things will be better off. My question is you already have something of a soft salary cap in MLB with the luxury tax threshold. Bob Nutting gets a check anytime these teams overspend. He gets money directly. So that's a notion that exists. And I think even if there was a salary cap floor, Jason, you'd have the valid question of, let's just say there's a floor of $100 million. How much further are the Pirates spending than that? Than any floor, and isn't there still going to be a gulf of like $150 million between them and some of these top payrolls?
Yeah, there will be. It would be less though if there wasn't a cap and a floor. I mean, none of this is to say that like this is going to fix all the problems. I don't think it will. I think it will reduce them. And no, I wouldn't expect the Pirates to spend much more than the floor. sadly. And people can feel however they want about that. I understand. I mean, here's my contention with the Pirates and their books and revenue sharing and whatever. Our Mark Belko reported a couple years ago about them basically covering their payroll and money that's made inside PNC Park. All right. If we operate off of that assumption, the Pirates, like you said, get money from Major League Baseball for revenue sharing. They get money from TV deals. Yes, it was less than it used to be. They've got hit in that department. There's national money, BAMTech money, whatever. I mean, if you want to, if you're the Pirates, if you want to dispel the idea that you're taking money, I mean, MLB has audited documents that they're audited by third-party companies. You can say, if you're the Pirates, you can take all of your beat writers in a room and say, look, this is the way our finances look. We know the perceptions out there that like Bob Nutting's putting money in his pocket. Here's where it's going. This is audited, signed off on by Major League Baseball. Here's a third-party company. Here's what the documents look like. We're not. This is the way our finances work. Let us walk you through them. And why not? Why don't you do that? And then we all write that story. We with accredited documents, you look into it, it's real, all that stuff, and the conversation ends. I don't understand why you wouldn't do that. So anyway, it's not all about money, but it sometimes is. I guess that's a weird thing to say. But the Pirates, Adam, I want to make this point, and it's somewhat related. They have spent a little bit of money the past two off seasons. Have they spent enough? No. But have they spent it smartly? I wouldn't say so. Yasmani Grandal, Rowdy Tellez, Michael A. Taylor, on and on. You know, the guys they've signed, even Martin Perez's contract that they then ultimately basically had to account for with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, et cetera. I mean, they haven't spent money smart enough. With little they spent, they've spent poorly. So, I mean, it's about a month. It's about amount. It's also about quality of spending.
Jason, you mentioned revenue sharing, and I think that's part of my hang up too. I think baseball needs to do better with the revenue sharing because we talk about the salary cap as if it's the thing that saved the Penguins, kind of going back to our earlier discussion at the top of the podcast. But the problem the Penguins had was that they didn't have any money. They were bankrupt. They had to. The only reason they were saved was because you converted Mario Lemieux's owed salary into ownership stake. That's the only way it worked. The Pirates are not out of money. The Pirates have lots of money. And the question is, how do you close that gap? I think part of the problem is the revenue sharing. And even if you had a salary cap model, if you're not funneling the sports money more to the smaller markets, it almost doesn't matter what the limit on, the biggest, what the salary cap would be. I want to get your thoughts on that. I also want to get your thoughts on the question of, to the extent revenue sharing does exist, should Ben Cherington, should Travis Williams be asked more? Whenever these big contracts happen, rather than defaulting to the place of, well, man, baseball's broken economically, what can the Pirates do? Why is the question not, hey, you're getting money from this giant contract that just got signed by the New York Mets and the Los Angeles Dodgers. What are you going to do with it?
Right. And that will be explained to us how they're redirecting it into other areas, how they believe in processes and they're funding things at Pirate City and internationally and all that stuff that we're told a bunch. Doesn't make it right. I'm just saying that's been their answer for years on how they do it. And we can't prove anything because they're a private company. I get emails from a lot of people that are mad about this and want us to look into it. We can't. We legally can't look into what they're doing. We can look into what's happening at PNC Park because it's a public facility that they're technically renting as a private company. We also don't have an opportunity to ask Travis Williams questions. I don't remember the last time he was available to media. He was available to fans. It's been maybe a year and a half since he's spoken to us. They consider Ben Cherington the voice on baseball. I certainly could understand asking Ben that question. He would give the same answer, and I believe he has been asked in the past. So I agree with you on the revenue sharing thing, Adam. I think it needs revamped, and it also needs accounted for. One of the things I don't understand is if you have a luxury tax, if this money, if there's an overage and it's getting redirected back to the Pirates, okay, that should be publicly accounted for where it goes. You know, that's not something that Bob Nutting can count on necessarily. That's something he's getting, and it's an undetermined amount. Why aren't you then explaining to the public, this is going to here, this is going to there, this is going to, international, we rebuilt the Dominican facility. We redid all the pitching machine. I'm just spitballing, but I mean, I wish there was more public information available on where those revenue sharing dollars were going. I'm fine with them getting more. I'm fine with redoing how it works. I just wish the public was informed more.
Well, I bet you the big markets would feel the same way, because I know that
Sure.
they, like, if you talk to a Yankees fan or a Mets fan or a Dodgers fan, they hate hearing the carping from Pirates fans or Guardians fans or Rays fans, because they feel they're doing their part for the sport and redistributing things downward. And I think that's where transparency benefits everybody, because the big franchises can say, this is the number we just sent directly down the system. What are these teams doing with it? I think that is a valid criticism for sure, Jason. Did want to get into a couple of baseball topics here, nuts and bolts stuff. Nick Yorke is a name that's come up at first base this week with Spencer Horwitz injured. There's a notion that the Bryan Reynolds is not going to be in the mix, as we had at different points in the offseason thought he might be. What's your reaction to those developments with the first base situation this week?
I'm not surprised, Adam. I think I wouldn't expect to see either of those two guys at first base, to be honest with you. I think the first base solution is probably a lot easier than we're making it out to be. Even for somebody who has sort of talked a little bit about Jack Sawinski being an option. He played that position in high school. I'd like to see him over there. Maybe that's too creative, or not creative, but just too funky for where the Pirates are at right now. I mean, Spencer Horwitz is back on the field, taking part in drills, to some capacity. That 6 to 8 week timeline, that's getting back into games. I don't think Spencer Horwitz is going to be out too terribly long. Honestly, one player here that I think is interesting in figuring out how this works, and I don't think it behooves them to move Bryan Reynolds, by the way, not to gloss over that. Nick Yorke's more of a second base, third base, middle infield type. But one guy I'm curious here, and I think has some impact on first base, is Henry Davis. I know that's a weird one. It's not saying Henry Davis is going to play first base. But if Henry Davis hits, they probably need to find a place for him at the major league level. And by all accounts and reporting and stuff we're getting out of Pirate City, he's been really good. If Henry Davis is really good, you keep him on the team, you could probably afford the flexibility of moving Endy Rodriguez to first base. Jared Triolo plays most of the time. He's a right-handed hitter. If you want to get a lefty bat in there, you can move Endy, and it gives you some flexibility. And it really doesn't disturb your roster much for when Horwitz gets back.
Yeah, and I think you got to be looking for the opportunities to find out what you've got in Henry Davis this season, one way or the other. Obviously, this is the time of year when everyone shows up in the best shape of their life, but you got to go out and prove it at some point. And I think that's an opportunity for Henry Davis to prove doubters like me wrong. Jason, I also wanted to ask about Oneil Cruz and the way he's talking about his relationship with his new teammate, Tommy Pham. They had a relationship that started in winter ball. Now he's here, and they seem to really like each other. You talked a little bit last week about Tommy Pham's potential as a tone setter in this clubhouse, and now you've heard a lot of praise from the people that are there. Even though I don't know, you and I looked at that acquisition and said, there's a clubhouse guy that's going to make a difference. Are you rethinking that position at all? And is this, maybe something that's going to help an Oneil Cruz in some type of way, is being around a professional like Tommy Pham?
Yeah, I do. It helped Oneil Cruz being around Carlos Santana. I've talked about that with you and other people, how much Santana, sort of showed Oneil Cruz what it was like to be a pro. I don't have any doubt that Tommy Pham's going to do that, but he wasn't brought in here to babysit Oneil Cruz. He wasn't brought in here to babysit anybody. I think team chemistry can be a really funny thing. And it's the same place, at the Post-Gazette or any place of employment. Like, you need all kinds of different personalities. If everybody's the same, that's no fun. And Tommy Pham is a different kind of personality. He's a personality that the Pirates have needed. Oneil Cruz is a really good kid. I like him a lot. Is he the most vocal around his teammates when things aren't going well? No. Oneil has a tendency to be quiet. He can be goofy in lighter moments, and that's great. But you need somebody who's comfortable in those awkward times, who really doesn't have a give to them. And Tommy Pham's that guy. He's not afraid to say anything to anyone, as we know, sometimes to his own detriment. But if the Pirates can go into this understanding like, look, okay, this guy's going to work. He's been places. He can help us. We should listen to what he has to say. To me, that's a really good place to be. And so Oneil's going to need some coaching. He's going to need some veteran leadership. I think he's going to have some, bumps in the road transitioning to center field. But yeah, I like what I'm hearing out of Tommy Pham. And if he can handle it physically, defensively, that sort of thing in left field, I think this move actually could work out decently well for the Pirates.
Yeah, certainly going to be fun to watch that situation play out. Jason, any final thoughts from Bradenton for the week? A lot of headlines coming. Didn't have a chance to get to all of them, but was there anything that stood out to you?
Keep Brian Hayes being healthy, I think, is a big thing. I'll just whip through some things very quickly. I liked what I heard, read, all that stuff about his back program, being able to move around. I worry about Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at short. I'm not sure that's the position for him, and I don't know what they're going to do there. Be curious to see if they do add another bat somewhere. I think they have the room for one. Paul Skeens has been a leader. Love everything I'm seeing out of him. Same thing for Bubba Chandler, at least in terms of raw stuff. And I think this team can be better than what people think. I really do.
Yeah, so certainly keep an eye on that. Subscribe to the channel here on the new Pirates YouTube channel. Just getting started. We've had a great reception. We hope you'll join us for the ride. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button. Help us out in the YouTube algorithm. We always appreciate that. And otherwise, Jason, you're going to be back Saturday with Greg Brown and Steve Last. Do you want to tease that at all?
Yeah, I do. Please watch this. It was a lot of fun. Those two, so the genesis for this, and I explained this in the podcast, I was at a Pittsburgh baseball happy hour with those guys, and they end up sitting on stools and like this group of like scouts, executives, farm directors, whatever, people who from Pittsburgh work for other teams. I've been going to this for a number of years, but so they're just sitting around and everybody is just listening to them enraptured by Blass and Brownie telling stories. And Blass is so good as a storyteller. And I thought to myself, if I could ever get this in podcast form, in PG rated form as well, we kind of toe the line there, but Blass kept it in check, I think. People will just love it. It was made for a podcast. And so we did an hour of those guys just on, I think it was Brownie's balcony in Florida, the place he was staying. And they were just telling stories. There's a Mike Lang story in there. Obviously, we recorded it before Mikey passed, but there's an amazing Mike Lang story talking about Roberto Clemente, what Steve remembers from his first spring training, all kinds of stuff. So check it out. It'll be a lot of fun. If you don't smile at that, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, please do. And at the end of a week like this, it's always good to laugh a little bit. So please subscribe to the channel. Check that out on Saturday. That'll go up around 9 or 10 a.m. Otherwise, thank you for your time. A long podcast today, but I think it was a great discussion. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.